explosion at a hospital in Gaza City. The Palestinian Health Ministry says hundreds of people killed, many more injured.
The Palestinian Health Ministry is saying the Al Ahli Hospital, which is in Gaza City in the northern half of Gaza, took a direct strike from an Israeli aircraft.
Well, the corporate media outlets like CBS and MSNBC did it again this week. They took the claims of terror groups as fact and broadcast them around the world, while the left-wing media may have backtracked on their statements about Israel attacking the hospital in Gaza. It's very clear that the information war is raging in this new conflict. In the age of AI and deep fakes, social media bots, and easily edited video, how do you best fight and win the propaganda war? Joining me now is adjunct fellow, the Hudson Institute, and former acting Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security, Ezra Cohen. And also joining me is a board member of the Special Operations Association of America and former senior member of the White House Hostage Policy Review Team, Alex Plitsas. Welcome to you both. Appreciate your service to the country and being here today. Ezra, this has perhaps always been part of warfare. I certainly dealt with it in Iraq. We'd have reporters from the New York Times actually go to Fedayeen plants, and they would report what they were saying over what the U.S. military was saying. But how has this battlefield become more challenging to navigate?
Well, first of all, it's important to point out that the information war actually started before the strike took place. The Hamas terrorists were lulling the Israeli security forces into a false sense of security so that they could conduct a surprise attack. And now what we're seeing is the same intelligence forces on the Israeli side that have to be focused on preparing the environment for a counterattack are now also faced with having to dispel all of these false reports that Hamas is putting out. So it's really a challenging situation for the Israelis.
Alex, the posts of Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar blaming Israel for a deadly explosion at the Gaza hospital, they haven't been taken down yet for their inaccuracy for some reason. Tlaib wrote, Israel just bombed the Baptist hospital, killing 500 Palestinians. Just like that, at POTUS, this is what happens when you refuse to facilitate a ceasefire and help de-escalate. A similar post, Omar wrote, bombing a hospital is among the gravest of war crimes. The IDF reportedly blowing up one of the few places the injured and wounded can seek medical treatment. Horrific. At POTUS needs to push for an immediate ceasefire to end this slaughter. Those posts obviously blaming Israel for the attacks. They still haven't been taken down. Is part of this challenge the fact that the platforms themselves, due to the volume of what we are seeing, the platforms themselves simply can't police the material?
Yes, I mean, this is part of the problem when we look at propaganda overall taking it up to another level. So my background, I came from psychological operations in the Army and spent some time as a military deception planner as well. Ezra owned the portfolio when he was at the Pentagon. Basically, he was the overall policy supervisor at that point for the work that the work that we do. So if you take a look at that particular image that was up before you guys flashed on the screen with the burning cars, this is one example that we can talk about as an anecdote. So there's a small impact crater there, and you'll see there's about 5 cars that are burning. You'll see a shrapnel pattern that's extremely tight around the vehicles, and then it disperses to the tops of the buildings. So it's indicative of a small ordnance of some type hitting the ground there. It looks most likely like a rocket strike, which is pretty obvious, and it's not a larger munition dropped from an aircraft. The problem is, as you mentioned, people take to social media right away, and it's hard to police. And that's in part because in our country, we have the right to free speech, and people have a right to say things that they want, unless it's, yelling fire in a crowded theater, which is the famous phrase from the Supreme Court case. So the platforms have a problem. Elon Musk has determined, at least on X, that, the community notes will help people regulate the information that's there. But the problem is, that is too slow to react to information that already spreads like wildfire. And for people who are looking to have, confirmation bias that, their opinion was correct, it's too late. And then it takes off, and we saw protests all over the Middle East, people taking to violent actions outside the embassies and whatnot, and that was all directly related.
And those protests also can turn deadly themselves. Ezra, what can Israel and the U.S. government be doing better, not to censor people, but to ensure that facts are articulated and confirmed for the public to lessen manipulation and doing it much more effectively?
So the first thing is the rapid release of true information. The best way to counter these false narratives is through true information. But that can be challenging because, again, a lot of the potential true information that can come out is from intelligence sources. And so this information, once it's collected, has to be analyzed and then brought down to the necessary level where it can be released. And this takes time and resources. What Alex is saying is right. The speed at which the fake stories are moving so quickly through the environment that it puts a ton of pressure on the intelligence apparatus, which again is also trying to focus on a real world combat situation. And to get that information downgraded out, the true information. I mean, you've seen the president talk this week about the sources he has.
Yeah, Alex, Alex, I've heard this statistic, and I just have about 30 seconds left. But I've heard a statistic that as much as 75% of what's on the internet within the next few years will be fake. It will be manipulated. Just real quick to you. This is something that doesn't just impact the war. It can impact elections. It can impact a whole host of debates that we have as a society. Is it really just about people learning to police what police their own information capture?
No, you're 100% correct. It's incredibly dangerous. There's a few reasons. I know we've only a few seconds left. For example, last week, Putin made it very clear that on the Ukraine situation, that if Ukraine's weapons were cut off, they would have about a week before the war would collapse. So if he has a choice between throwing another 100,000 bodies at a front line that's a meat grinder with explosions, or spending a little bit of money on soft power to try to influence in the U.S. to cut off weapons and flow invade into Ukraine, which one of those do you choose if you're a strategic decision maker? It's very clear where the Russians are investing their money. And that's where we're going to continue to see problems.
Yeah, I think we're going to continue to see it through 2024, and our elections are also a target for this misinformation. All right, this is our new normal, folks, and we're going to need to adapt. Ezra Cohen and Alex Plitsas, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you.
Thanks for having us.
And stay with us. There's much more to come when America Right Now returns.